I'd like to call the SAU meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. We have, I'm hearing an echo.
Don't hear an echo.
Okay. Our first item on our agenda is the agenda review. Does anyone have anything they'd like to add or change? I'm going to get rid of what I'm hearing. Excuse me a second. Second item on our agenda is the public may address the board. If anyone has any questions or comments from the public on any item that is not on our agenda, please raise your hand. Seeing no one, I have a quick announcement I'd like to make. We have the SAU board would like to announce that Dr. Jay Adams has agreed to renew his contract with us for another 5 years, and we are all thrilled. I have no problem speaking to the board on this. Thank you so much, and we appreciate your expert leadership and your thoughtful oversight for additional 5 years. Thank you, Jay.
Thanks so much.
And moving on, did you have a question?
No, I was applauding Dr. Bader.
The next and only item on our agenda is the approval of the consideration of a new policy that is not unlike a policy that we all agreed to sign up for last year at this time before school. It is the delegation of authority to our superintendent due to the ongoing presence of COVID-19. As you may or may not realize, last year's policy was an emergency-based policy that has expired. It was related to the states of emergency in Vermont and New Hampshire. That is no longer in effect. We still see a very fluid situation with COVID-19 and the Delta variant. And I think it would behoove us as a board to consider signing Jay up in his pandemic response team for another year, or as long as we actually find we have a need for immediate response and oversight for our schools. So to that end, I have put together a policy C25 you'll see in board docs. And before I send it to the full board, I also sent it to the policy committee, which we normally do, even though tonight I'm proposing that we discuss this policy. I know you've all read it in advance. If we could discuss it and agree to it on first read, we can skip the second read as we've done in the past, and then simply, what is the term, not amend it, but accept it at our next meeting to make it official. Does anyone have any comments at all about the way the policy is worded?
Just a question on your process. I thought I heard we were going to only do a first read to approve it, or are we doing 2 readings like normal?
This will be the only reading as I'm proposing it, because we would like to get this in place, obviously, for the start of school. And it is essentially a similar emergency policy, but it's not in any way connected to the states this year as it was last year.
Right.
Okay, yes, please.
I just want to clarify. So our policy is that if we do expedite policy by approving it on a single read, then we do have to come back to just confirm our vote.
Okay,
at a
thanks.
subcommittee meeting.
Okay.
Sorry.
You're definitely-
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You need to mute. There you go.
Oh, sorry, yeah. But it's something to do with my sound. Go ahead.
Isn't the next meeting in October?
October 25th, I think, yeah.
So then we wouldn't officially have it in place until then?
I think we can call a special meeting.
Well, no, it is officially in place. It's just a matter of us basically reaffirming the fact that
Reaffirming
we
it, okay.
expedited it. Yeah.
So we read it tonight, we vote, and
And it's
then
in
we
place.
just, it's in place, and then we could change our mind, I guess,
Right.
or whatever, before October. Okay, great. Thank you.
My only comment on the content is actually in the very first section. I think we might want to remove the fall 2021, as much as I would love to be optimistic.
Yes.
I think just the 2021, 2022 school year.
Insert the word fall, did you say? or-
No,
Remove
it
it.
says fall, and I just
Oh, I
don't want
see,
people
I
to
see.
think, I don't want people to think that it will expire after that time.
Yep.
So.
Yep, that's a great point. Does anyone else have any suggestions? Yes. Go ahead, Garrett.
So Ben had also put some in his absence, which I think we should probably read. So number one was actually, Kelly, you had just said that. So
Right.
he suggested the full 2021, 2022 school year. He made a comment that he says, so it seems like a bit of a disconnect between sections A and B, has to align with existing policies, but also has authority to suspend policies.
Yeah, I didn't read that as a,
Okay, I don't think there's,
inconsistency, but Ben did, and I don't know if anyone else.
did anyone else, we don't need to dwell on this. I think Ben made that comment. I didn't read it either as an inconsistency, but Jay, do you see something there that is?
I guess the first item A lists policies that are required by law that are then later, they're also addressed under B
Yeah.
as exceptions. Like I wouldn't have the ability to suspend any policy that was required.
You couldn't suddenly start releasing confidential student information, for example.
Right,
I
right.
think
Or
that's
allowing
what's-
bullying to happen
Right.
like without any interference.
Urge you not to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so why don't we move on from that? He had a question, just if, I mean, the letter does not address what happens if the superintendent closes school. Does that mean that we shift to remote learning? I'm assuming the answer would be yes, even though we don't have remote learning option formally set up.
So I'm looking at Robin. If something should happen and we need to make the shift, we have the experience of having done that before, even though we're counting on the fact that we won't need it. Robin, did you want to share what the discussions have been thus far?
Yes, we still would have the piece in place that we had last year, so depending upon the circumstance, we go into various forms of remote learning or hybrid, things like that, depending upon the circumstance. We'd still follow those guidelines from last year.
So I think we're okay there, not to do anything. And then again, I think consistent with last year's policy, he suggested at the end, it says once the policy ends, or the policy ends once the board rescinds, and maybe we should just amend it to say either when the board rescinds or at the end of the 2021, 2022 academic year, which I think is what the last year, which he thought the last year policy said.
Whichever comes first.
Yeah,
You will agree with that last edit?
Yes.
I think it's fine. And then I think one thing on the Norwich, so we did get an email, hopefully it's okay. We got an email from someone in the public
Mhm.
that may just be worth addressing quickly. So they were concerned that we are delegating authority to Jay. I think when we brought this up, I think we all agreed that it is actually a good thing to delegate this authority and that we're not in any way giving this person, individual, I think was concerned that as a board now, we would lose school board control over COVID policies and what we would, is that how you read that email too, Tom or Neil? Or I just want to make sure, I mean, when I've read this and listened to Jay, I heard that it was, I kind of viewed it as more of an efficiency thing where if all of a sudden something happened, we don't have to pull together a meeting, warn a meeting, like that could take 3-4 days. And we need Jay to make a decision like now on COVID stuff. So is that, sorry, I'm looking at the other.
Yeah, oh. That was, yes, I'm looking at it from your perspective as far as an efficiency, and I also think that with the pandemic response team supporting Jay as well, that we're in good position to be able to respond to such matters. I think that, and there are members of the public on, so they may be able to chime in with their concerns as well at this point in time, but I just think it's best for us to reiterate that we are doing everything that we can and are following all of the guidelines that we have from CDC and other areas. And so, for example, things like the mask guidance that says we're going to mask for the first 2 weeks of school is going to be looked at as we go forward and very possibly extended based upon whatever the pandemic response team sees. So I am confident in what I saw last year in the way that this worked, but I do see it, yes, as an efficiency that that we should be considering now.
Yes, Kim. Sorry.
Oh, and I just wanted to highlight, so kind of in the last sentence of part B, it says, in the event that the superintendent suspends provisions of board policies in whole or in part, the superintendent shall provide prompt notice to the board of that action, of which then the board can take a counter action if needed. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone could see that part.
I was gonna say, if I were to be the kind of person who let these special powers go to my head and I decided to be an autocrat, I think you can simply reverse this policy. You could call an emergency meeting and say, this guy's lost his mind and we're taking it back, so.
I just wanted to sort of publicly state that, I think this process worked really well last year. And so I think, well, I understand the concerns, and I think we had some of those concerns last year. I think this worked very well for us last year, and the committee did a wonderful job. So I just want to put that out there. I just want to, there is one hand in the public when you're ready for that.
Yes, let's do that. Can we move them over?
Yep, they're good to go.
Thank you. Go ahead. Please state your name and ask a question.
Hi, my name is Lynn McCormick. I'm a Marion Cross parent, and I am the member of the public. I think you referred to your email about delegating the responsibility. My concern is not certainly that Jay is an autocrat. My concern is that the pandemic response team is not accessible to the public. I think we have a lot of parental concern about the COVID protocols, and essentially, because I think that what happened last year, it worked very well. There was, minimal transmission in school or no transmission. I understand all that. But really, the way that the decisions were being made by the team, it was sort of like, well, the pandemic response team says this, the pandemic response team says this. There wasn't any public ability to attend meetings or knowledge of what the actual science was. And I specifically last year submitted a letter with some really specific references and questions about the science, and the response was not addressing any of the points I made from the pandemic response team. And so my concern is that when we sort of delegate it to this committee that meets separately, it's unclear what the level of discussion is that's happening and how the decisions are being made. Whereas with these school board meetings, we're sort of able to participate and understand. So thank you.
Thank you. I would like to say that I guess we have read the letter, and I also have seen last year a significant amount of communication that I thought we had from the administration and from the COVID response team last year. I also know that if this meeting is any indication of the difficulty of getting the school board together quickly, we do have a number of requirements to hold a meeting, and we need not only to warn the meeting, but we need to have a quorum, which means we need to pull members quickly and pull members out of their lives from unplanned meeting quickly. This is one of the reasons, I think the main reasons, that we're requesting that we have policy in place and a team in place to respond adequately and appropriately in an emergency situation or a time-sensitive situation. But I very much appreciated your letter, and thank you. Does anyone else have any comments? Yeah, Kim.
I don't know when this is the appropriate time, if it's this meeting or the Dresden meeting, but maybe more to her comment is, kind of questions about kind of the current plans in place for reopening schools and whatnot. Should that be a discussion later in Dresden? Or I want to make sure that that part of it too is addressed, and I've heard it from others. So I think, and I see there's a document in this particular about our school vaccination requirements that's in here, but is this the right time to do that, or should we? I'm kind of looking at both Kelly,
It's not
both
on our
Kellys.
agenda per se. I think it may be coming up with the superintendent's report.
And Robin's report as well.
So we will be talking about
I think Lynn has her hand up again in the
I'm
gallery.
sorry, yes. Lynn, go ahead. Are we able
So
to-
I think, sorry, I just wanted to follow up I think I'm not sure if it's possible for there to be more clarity around the pandemic response team and specifically like I understand that there's the CDC guidance, which is not always as up to date as we might like based on the science, based on the World Health Organization guidance. So I think understanding a little more for the public about how these decisions are being made is really, really essential. And also understanding who the medical experts or epidemiologists, like where that perspective is coming from on the team, because I think, like I know there's a list of members, but I don't know how the decisions are actually made. So thank you. I will lower my hand.
I think that will be addressed. Yeah, Lisa.
Yeah, and again, thank you, Lynn, both for your letter and for calling in. It's really helpful to hear things. But I think one thing that should be clear is we as a board aren't delegating the authority to make decisions to the pandemic response team. This policy says we're delegating it to the superintendent. And he will be informed by the pandemic response team as well as us, as well as parents that he hears from. So I wanted to be really clear that the language of this policy does not delegate the decision-making to anyone other than Jay. And from my perspective, as Garrett said and Tom echoed, this is really for efficiency's sake. Like if something happened that we needed to shut the schools down quickly, it can't happen getting the 12 of us together because of laws and having to warn meetings. It's at least 3 days, even if we can move as quickly as we can. And so, for me, that's the reason to do this. But I do appreciate Kim pointing out having a place for parents to, maybe what we should do is be very explicit about the best way for parents and community members to express their concerns without overwhelming Jay's inbox, which is what happened last year. So I want to do everything I can to avoid Jay's inbox looking like it did last year. But right, exactly. But it does seem as if there would be a good way to have like frequently asked questions on the website, or I don't know, just something like that. So thanks.
Sure. So to Lynn's point, I think we can do a better job of being transparent with the work of the committee. That's an easy one to add on to Robin's plate. But I will say there are some of this decision making is very limited in terms of the flexibility we have. Our states haven't been great about giving us firm mandates for what we're supposed to do. That's currently being debated in Montpelier right now. The governor has said that since it's not a state of an emergency, they're not going to impose any mandates on us, for example, mask mandates or mandatory vaccinations. The state of New Hampshire has explicitly sent us in writing guidance that we are not allowed to have a vaccine mandate, for example. So some of those things may or may not be known to the public. They're attached to this particular item on the agenda tonight. I put both the New Hampshire guidance as well as the Vermont guidance along with the resolution or the policy recommendation. I shared this at the last Norwich meeting. Last year, actually going all the way back to when we were in the lead up to the decision that was made at both state levels to shut down. For the weeks preceding that, I was inundated with, I'll use the term suggestions from the public, from parents particularly, about what we should or shouldn't do. Like I had people who were telling me adamantly that we needed to close the schools immediately. And I had folks who were telling me that we needed, by all means, to keep the schools open as long as possible. And the people who were giving me that advice were equally credentialed experts in their field. I would have competing epidemiologists or public health experts telling me two absolutely contrary courses of action that I should take. And that was kind of when we started turning to we turned to the medical professionals and said, hey, can you folks come in and help us? And they could have those debates and then they could come up with a policy. And that was sort of the beginning of what is now our pandemic response team. And it was a relief to me to not have to try to make these Solomon-like decisions about things that I'm not really qualified to opine on. So we're not going to make any big moves or put our kids at risk or our staff at risk or our community at risk. So I hope that based on our performance last year that the public would have some faith in us that we're going to make decisions in a wise way. We know that the progress of the Delta variant right now is frightening to a lot of people. We're also like looking to the state still, like we were last year, for firmer guidance than they've given us. But in the absence of that, we will follow the CDC. We'll follow the guidance from our advisory folks. And I'll make the same promise I made to Norwich, is that if things change and they look really bad, we're going to react. We're not going to wait. We'll be monitoring this every single day. And even though people get a little concerned when they read things like we're not going to be doing contact tracing, we go back and forth on those sorts of detailed decisions. But one thing that we did decide, and it was based on public feedback that we're getting from parents, that we weren't even going to notify families when we had a case, because we found no in-school transmission last year. And rather than panic everybody or unnecessarily disrupt school, the initial decision was to not even do that notification and risk people's medical privacy. But based on the feedback we got, we've altered that decision, and we will be notifying people if there are cases. We won't wait until there's a cluster, which was the original plan that we had. But we still won't be doing our own contact tracing. In Vermont, the Department of Health has set up contact tracing, and they are going to be doing that. So we aren't going to be responsible for doing contact tracing, but somebody will be. And again, if that changes in New Hampshire, we'll certainly do whatever New Hampshire tells us to do. And again, if we start to see that we've got a lot of cases in school, we're going to change what we do, and we're going to be being very transparent with our communication, and we'll be notifying folks as soon as those sorts of decisions are in front of us. So I can just make I guess I hate to say trust me, but I guess that's what the board is doing tonight. If they do approve this policy changes, you're going to trust me, trust our organization to make decisions in the best interest of our kids and community.
Does anyone else have any other questions? Seeing none, then we will move forward to business requiring action. Yes.
Move to approve policy C25, delegation of authority due to ongoing presence of COVID-19 pandemic as amended. Because we've made a couple of those changes. With complete trust in Jay and his team.
Yes, Kim.
Second, as amended.
And vote.
Kelly, first discussion.
Yes.
Can we just one more time go through those changes so that everybody knows what they are versus the written form of the document that's here?
Yes, we can. And actually, the last one was the only one that folks
Yeah.
approved.
The only two is I think Kelly had made the first one, and it's intended for the full year. And then same thing, the last one was that we're going to end it, that it also ends after the academic year.
Okay.
And those are the two
Yeah.
changes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So may I have a vote on the policy as amended?
Oh, no roll calls, thank you.
No roll call. Okay, moving to non-public. We have no non-public agenda topics for next meeting. We have been discussing just very tangentially and recently the possibility of making our school board process more efficient. And to do that, we have a number of avenues that we could pursue. To that end, we are asking for Jay to set up with legal counsel and the SBA and the NHSBA to come and meet with the school board on a kind of a retreat basis to discuss what we could do to make our meetings more efficient. That's the only topic that I know that's on the possible agenda for the next October meeting.
Kelly, sorry, we were going to update people on the superintendent review process. We had promised that at the last meeting that the October meeting would just be an update. So.
Okay.
Maybe just for the benefit of the public to define when we say meetings more efficient and why we're calling legal to do something which may sound, kind of an administrative agenda review type of thing. I think we're talking about legally, since we are interstate school district, we're talking how can we, be more efficient as far as fewer meetings or kind of collapsing some of these things. So we're not doing things in triplicate or quadruplicate
Thank you.
because of
That's much
our
clearer.
interstate, which is, oh yeah, it's a little bit different than like, you know,
Absolutely.
having a better agenda or something like that, right?
No,
So, okay, I just want to make sure that's clear.
Any other comments?
I just have one quick one,
Yeah.
Kelly, and I know we're up against time, but I just want to say to those folks who are sending me advice, that I apologize if I don't get back to you quickly, but like last year, I have a lot of folks who are sending me either warnings or strong suggestions or courses of action that differ from those that we've already publicized. And I just have to say, I try to respond, but as that volume tends to increase as we get closer and closer to Monday, I'm going to apologize ahead of time. I look for official communication. I sent a notice out this evening. If your questions still aren't answered or you still disagree, please feel free to send me a message. But I can't guarantee that I'll be able to get to it promptly. Just because of we're trying to get school started, we're trying to make these decisions, and then to have them second guessed and have to explain them to numerous individuals, it's much easier for me to send a mailing out to everyone. So I'll try to get back on a routine of sending out an update on maybe a weekly basis to try to address the sort of aggregated concerns that we're hearing.
Kelly?
I will go ahead and take it on behalf of myself too, say the board supports that course of action. But I also wanted to add on to that I know there's been a lot of feedback from the public specifically about mandating vaccines. And I know we've put that document in there. I just wanted to reiterate that currently that is against the law for us to do that in New Hampshire. So if you have comments about that or requests about that, please direct them to the people who are making those laws, because that's something that is currently completely out of our hands. So just want to explicitly say that.
Any other comments or questions? Any motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn the meeting at 7:01 PM.
Seconded by Lisa. Thank you. And all in favor? Thank you. Sorry,
Kelly, can I just point out that we're gonna have to leave this meeting